All right, well, welcome everyone to Roundtable on window energy savings, myths, policies, and next steps. This course is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little. This course is approved for multiple continuing education units, as well as LEED AP homes, under our Certified Green Home Professional designation, materials and energy pillars, and AIA, health, welfare, and safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Before we get started, we wanted to give a shout out to a new GreenHome Institute membership benefit alert. 10% off your Indo window package just by being a GreenHome Institute member. There's so many different benefits you get by becoming a member. You get instant access to our webinars, discounts on courses, free courses and training, discounts on green building certification, and so much more. We also have several, I think a couple of these mugs left here that we're going to send you to, corn-based, made right in the USA. We'll kick them your way if you sign up today. And on that note, I want to say a huge thanks to one of our top tier sponsors before we get started, Indo Windows. Storm windows on the inside, yes, you can improve your energy performance with Indo inserts. You can feel warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer while saving up to 20% energy on your energy bills. Third-party studies show up to a 10% reduction in air leakage too for whole home upgrades. This do-it-yourself Indo inserts are made of acrylic panels edged with a soft patented silicone compression tube that presses into the interior window frames to seal drafts. You can learn more at indowindows.com. Also, thanks to our second tier sponsor, Rockwool. Rockwool is a mineral wool that can be used all the way from the top to the bottom to insulate without foam in a more environmentally friendly way that also keeps heat inside. They're doing something really cool that I'm excited about, which is their our class, which they're teaching builders in the field all across the country how to properly install exterior insulation. And they're giving, I think they're still doing a giveaway if you sign up to win for one of your projects, some Rockwool. Check them out over at rockwool.com. So before we get started, again, the idea is that, to do a green building project, you have to get better energy performance. And to get better energy performance, you're going to have to change the windows, but especially on renovations, that's not always a cost-effective or practical approach. And so we really want to start talking about some other ideas that can be used that can still help you achieve energy reduction, comfort, and health, and achieve a green building certification. As far as LEED goes specifically, we're looking at the LEED Materials and Resources Environmentally Preferable Products category, or MR. And you're going to be looking at option 2 there, environmentally preferable products, where at least 90% of a component, such as windows here, has to be reclaimed or refurbished or improved in some ways. And so this is a way to get an additional point in the LEED for Homes program. And of course, in regards to this, it has to be done with at least 2 other components to receive that additional point, which must comply with the environmentally preferable products. And then, of course, as we mentioned, improving windows means improved performance and U value and also reduced leakage rate. So that's going to help with your LEED annual energy performance points, which is going to assist you in getting a better LEED energy budget if you're using option 1, or a better HERS index rating if you're using option 2. So by improving windows on a LEED renovation, you can score better energy points, better material points. So that's basically where LEED comes into that. So at this point, I'm going to be done talking, and I'm going to be handing it off to our speakers. I'm very excited to have Sam, Scott, and Catherine, who are going to introduce themselves and their organizations as we go, and then we'll get to Q&A at the end. So first up, we have Catherine Court, and I will hand it to you. Please take it away, Catherine.
So thanks very much to Brett and the folks at GreenHome Institute for giving us this opportunity to talk to you about some of DOE's window attachments research and the storm window and insulating panel campaign that DOE has recently launched. As Brett said, I'm Catherine Court. I'm an economist with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, which is one of the DOE laboratories located in Southeast Washington State. And I also want to recognize my PNNL colleagues, Christian Valoria, who is leading the storm window and insulating panel campaign, and Allegra Steenson, Tom Kolb, who have supported the field and modeling research for this program that I'm going to be discussing today. So over the past 10 years, DOE has sponsored a series of tests, field demonstration, and modeling studies examining the performance of modern secondary window panel attachments. These findings demonstrate significant heating and cooling load reductions with the applications of storm windows, especially for older homes that have the single pane or double pane clear glass windows. Basically, the bottom line up front here is that modern storm windows can be installed at less than a third of the cost of window replacement while achieving savings on par with a low-E double pane window replacement. But despite the cost-effective energy savings, we see again and again residential efficiency and weatherization programs only focusing on window replacement or even skipping over windows in need of upgrades altogether just because full replacement is not part of the program or not cost effective. As we all likely know, of all the envelope components, roofs, floors, windows, and walls, windows account for a disproportionate share of thermal losses in a home. So if a retrofit or weatherization program doesn't find a solution to this thermal hole in the wall, it faces mounting challenges in maintaining occupant comfort and transitioning homes away from fossil burning equipment to heat pumps. And we think these modern energy efficient storm windows and insulating panels could help address this issue. So DOE has launched the SWIP campaign to help increase the adoption of panels in the retrofit market. And just to be clear, I'm going to be talking about both interior and exterior storm windows. For some people, the term storm windows refers only to the exterior attachment, where an interior attachment would be referred to as an interior window panel or insulating panel or insert. But both forms of attachments yield savings and comfort benefits. So we include all energy rated secondary window attachments as part of the SWIP campaign. So as previously mentioned, we know that windows are a major source of thermal transfers through the building envelope. For a typical code-built home, the windows are going to be making up roughly 7% of the envelope area, but they will be responsible for nearly half of the heat transfers through the envelope. So a major contributor to both heating and cooling loads. Over half the homes in the US are estimated to have what we would consider to be low performance windows. These are single pane or clear glass double pane windows with no thermally improving window attachments. And as we know, the primary manner in which we retrofit old leaky windows is by replacing windows. But we really are only replacing about 2% of the windows each year, and window replacement may not be desired for environmental or aesthetic reasons, and is often cost prohibitive for most, many at least, homeowners. So energy efficient storm windows offer an affordable, environmentally sustainable retrofit alternative to replacement. And one of the things we like to make clear at the get-go is that we are not advocating for anyone to install your grandmother's old homely storm windows, as shown here on the left, which had to be installed or removed every season, had to be cleaned almost monthly. Storm windows have evolved through the years, and modern storm windows are designed to blend in with the existing architecture. They can be permanently mounted and are available as fixed and operable models. They're also available with improved glazing performance with low-E and solar control coatings. I've listed all the benefits which have been validated in the field, but I want to draw your attention to the graph I'm showing in the bottom center of the slide. This is taken from our lab home study that we completed out at PNNL. One of the things that is important to note is that not only our average annual HVAC energy savings substantial for this product, but the savings are coincident with a peak HVAC loads both in the home and at the grid level for most regions. In this case, you see the winter savings in those early morning hours. This, I should note, is that's a time of that a home that's heated with heat pumps are going to be drawing on that auxiliary heat, which can drive up the electric costs and put added pressure on the grid. Thus, it's important to note that these window retrofits are complementary with any sort of efforts to promote heat pump electrification, which is kind of a big deal right now. A lot of programs focusing on this. So modern thermally efficient storm windows are minimally invasive, easy to install, affordable retrofit that can save an average of 10 to 30% on heating and cooling bills. DOE has thoroughly field tested these energy efficient storm windows, which now come with an energy rating label and can help consumers. These labels can help consumers specify products that meet their needs and program requirements. These can be year-round, permanent insulating and air sealing measures that come with added benefits of improving acoustics and comfort. They come as fixed or operable units and allow for egress when needed. And unlike windows of the past, these panels are aesthetically pleasing, as you can see from the photos I've presented. I'm showing an assortment of different energy rated insulating panels, including the interior acrylic insert in the top left made by Indo Windows, which who you're going to be hearing from later in this presentation. So just to review, storm windows are improve window performance in 3 different ways. First, it provides air sealing of the primary window. In field studies, we've seen significant reductions of air leakage of the entire home from the application of new storm windows. Next, low E storm windows, or all storm windows actually, will create a dead airspace, which reduces conduction and convective heat losses across that prime window. And some storm windows are also available with low E glass, which reflects that radiant heat back into the home during the winter season and reflects it out during the cooling season. And there are storm windows available that have solar control coatings as well, that reduce that solar heat gain coefficient of the window. Here I'm going to be presenting a sample of field studies that have been performed in occupied field sites. Note that we have multifamily, single family, manufactured homes in multiple climate zones represented here. In the top one here is the Philadelphia multifamily case study, 101 apartments where retrofit were energy rated storm windows, where they replace old clear glass windows with modern low E windows, storm windows. And as you can see, the energy savings are substantial with 20% heating reduction, 9% cooling reduction, and that whole home air leakage was reduced by an average of 10%. We also have the application of thermally efficient exterior storm windows over single pane windows in the 6 HUD homes in Chicago, the next one down, which reduced the heating load by 21% and home air leakage by 6 to 8%. One of the impressive results from this field study is that the field study leads had an opportunity to go back to these homes about 10 years after the original installations to see if they were still installed and functioning as insulating panels. And what they found was that out of the 100 windows observed, only 1 window was left in an open position during the winter, which is obviously not ideal, and 1 window had a chip in it. But that equates to basically 98% persistence of the energy savings for these storm windows over that 10-year period, which is really impressive. And I point this out because often some of the utility programs that we've been trying to work with are resistant to storm windows, as they believe that nobody will keep these on permanently, but that's simply not what we're seeing in the field. And the next one down is the Atlanta field study, was a low to moderate income application. And one of the things I like to point out that isn't listed here is that When the study participants were asked to rate what they liked or disliked about storm windows, aesthetic improvement was the #1 quality listed. So storm windows can actually improve that curbside appeal of the home. And the last field study I'm going to share took place at the P&L campus where I work in the lab homes test facility, which is a twin set of manufactured homes built to reflect common thermal features of existing homes. And occupancy is simulated. In this case, we had double pane windows in the home with essentially no air leakage, but they were metal frame clear glass windows. We tested both interior and exterior storm windows and found an average annual savings of 10%, which was pretty darn close to the savings we realized with the triple pane window replacement retrofits, which was about 12%. So about a decade ago, DOE started examining the energy impacts of window coverings and attachments and found that these window attachments had the potential to save substantial amount of energy, but of course, the savings varied by the type of product, baseline conditions, climate zone, et cetera. So it seemed like it was time to provide consumers with energy performance information in the form of a rating, and thus the Window Attachments Energy Rating Council, or AERC, was launched. AERC is now an independent public interest organization whose mission is to provide consumers with credible, relevant, and comparable information about window attachments and their performance. And they have ratings available for a range of interior products and storm window panels. For storm windows, there are actually 38 products certified and rated in AERC, manufactured by 5 different companies. And of course, Sam Pardue of Indo Windows will be speaking to you later about some of their energy rated products. This is a bit messy. I know I load a lot in, but I just wanted to take you through an example of the type of information that is available from the AERC database, all available online. Most of the rated products are residential products, but you can select whatever product type you're interested in, and there are secondary glazing products rated for commercial applications as well. Survey of consumers indicated that metrics like U factor, solar heat gain coefficient, were not well understood by the public. So the AERC developed an energy performance rating, or EP rating, that combines all those metrics together into a single rating where higher numbers indicate greater energy savings for both cool and warm climates. And so that is available with the residential products. I've listed some of the storm windows, and you see that these ratings are very high, particularly for the cooler climates. And now if you are in a mixed zone, like me, you might want to take a look at both the cool climate rating and the warm climate ratings and select products based on whatever your needs are for your particular window. AERC has developed a consumer label. An early version is presented there in the left corner. And the AERC rating for residential products also comes with the usual suspects: U factors, solar heat gain coefficient, visual transmittance, and air leakage. So if you are an architect, designer, or running any sort of energy efficiency program and you're interested in getting a high performance storm windows and panels into your program or project, you need only specify a desired AERC rating to ensure high quality energy rated products that meet whatever target you're shooting for. The products with low E coatings also qualify for Energy Star label, which can be another good reference to ensure quality products. The Energy Star certification guarantees a certain level of performance, airtightness, and cost effectiveness. Back in 2015, we completed a modeling study where we looked at the savings and costs that were simulated for 39 different prototype homes across 22 cities, 8 climate zones. And an important note is that the storm window application yielded savings to investment ratio well over 1, and all the cool climate and most of the mixed climate zones and some of the warmer climate zones as well. This is, I'm showing an example of output from a weatherization audit tool. Not sure if anyone is participating in these kinds of programs, but they have pretty strict criteria. And this just shows you the results from Pennsylvania audit. And you see that the storm windows rank just below water heater tank insulation in terms of SIR, but above that insulation, attic insulation in Pennsylvania. And then finally, I just wanted to show some examples, some real world examples of storm windows and insulating panel applications. You see a mix of different residential, commercial buildings, particularly of interest in historic applications, where if you're wanting to preserve the facade or the window, an exterior storm window application can add added protection. And then, of course, if you're not wanting to mess with the exterior facade of the building at all, there are interior applications. And you can see from this selection of interior applications, an added benefit, of course, in those high-rise applications. You've got all these similarly sized windows, bulk purchase of all these different windows, and application from the interior of the room, avoiding any kind of scaffolding to get up there. And then similarly, multifamily applications, again, you see that the high-rise application for the interior, the advantage of being able to apply the attachment from the inside, which Sam will probably talk about more in a little bit. So I just wanted to wrap up by leading you to some of our resources. As I mentioned, we have the SWIP campaign that's taken place, a website and contacts there if you have any interest in participating or want to access any of the resources we have available. I also want to throw out another resource, which is the recently launched Partnership for Advanced Window Solutions, which again is a collaborative that is trying to accelerate the highest performance window products in the market. And this includes window attachments. And in fact, we're about to launch out of pause a task force focusing on commercial secondary glazing. So please, if any interest, take a look at these websites or directly contact any of the leads. And I thank you very much for your time.
Well, my name is Scott Seidler. I'm the CEO and founder of Austin Historical. We're down here in Orlando, Florida, and also write quite a bit for thecraftsmanblog.com. That's my content site trying to educate homeowners, DIYers, architects, contractors, anybody and everybody that wants to talk about old buildings and particularly old windows and doors. So my company, we're about 30 people strong, and we restore historic windows and doors. We replicate them, we upgrade them for energy efficiency, and do a lot of the work to preserve these. And it's a lot of a passion project for us, because we really believe that the greenest window is the one that's already there. So we're going to walk through this, and basically what I wanted to talk about was some of the largest, some of the bigger arguments that I get for replacement, for why old windows maybe need to be revised, because we acknowledge that a lot of these windows are terribly inefficient the way that they are, the condition that they're in. Just like if you got a brand new triple pane argon filled window and let it sit for 80 or 100 years with no maintenance, no care, it would also be inefficient. So it's not a flaw in the design of these historic windows, and it's really just a flaw in abuse and maybe misuse and just neglect over the years. So just a simple sample is on a commercial building, this window here. Really a 1926 train station here in Orlando, that the original windows, double hung windows, great for ventilation, but they were not really up to par. You can see it's missing a lot of glazing putty. The paint has failed, the wood is weathered. We were able to restore that, put it back into use, and now that window should get easily another 100 years. A lot of the issues that we see with these windows are cosmetic. A lot of people, whether it's in a commercial or residential setting, they'll look at the painted over the hardware, the rusted steel windows, just the disrepair of the wood, and they'll say, well, this window is too far gone, it can't be saved. And usually it's just a matter of the darn thing is just ugly. It's just got 15 layers of paint on it, and just like a brand new replacement window, if you put 15 layers of paint on it and let termites chew on it if it's wood, or let the water get to it if it's steel, it's going to look pretty awful. But that doesn't mean it can't be brought back. And one of the things that we like the most about the simplicity in the design of these old windows is that they have almost an infinite lifespan. There is not a set lifespan for single pane glass. It doesn't have a 15, 20, or 30-year lifespan before the seals have failed and it needs to be replaced. Same kind of advantage with storm windows, where if there's, if there is air infiltration between them, you can modify that, you can change it. Unlike an IGU to double, triple pane, that you really can't, there's not a lot you can do to repair those if those units have fogged or failed. There are very simple upgrades, like Catherine was talking about, that you can do, adding an exterior or interior storm window onto these. But really, for a lot of us, it's stripping the paint off of these, removing the lead paint in a safe way, getting them back to the condition they should be, and putting them back into operation. We do get a lot of issue where there's talk about the operational carbon on windows, and I believe that that is one part of this the formula. But we also need to look at the place of, if you're replacing a historic window, old growth wood or solid cold rolled steel window, for a new replacement window, then you're replacing the embodied carbon. You're trading that for the reduction in embodied carbon. You're trading that for a reduction in operational carbon. And I don't believe that you need to make that trade-off. I think that looking at the stats and the studies we've seen and been a part of, that you can keep the embodied carbon of this window, not add additional waste to the landfill, and you can add on to these windows. And I'm going to go through a few of the ways that we will do that. But just to say that while the material is already there, looking at it from a LEED perspective, let's keep as much of that original material that's in good repair as we possibly can. One common misconception I'll say about a lot of these windows, we get calls both on commercial and residential side of people saying, I have drafty old windows and I need to do something about it. And then I'll come out and take a look at the windows and realize that the windows are completely caulked shut and covered in multiple coats of paint. And I'll respond to most of the clients or people we're consulting for that you don't actually have drafty windows. They're hermetically sealed by decades of painters. So understanding what the real issue is, just because it's old, we have this kind of mentality now in a tech-driven society that old is bad, newer is better. And I would say that better is better, not just newer is better. One of the bigger issues that we come across, in addition to obviously simple cosmetic things, are structural windows, structural issues to it. You can see on this window, we've got, this was a fairly ornate multi-pane sash. All the white area has been reconstructed with epoxy. This is from a historic landmark here in Florida and a historic museum. There is a lot of repair, a lot of rebuilds that we did. This doesn't always work for, the average homeowner. This can be expensive. It's time consuming. It requires skilled craftsmanship. But we've been able to, we can take these structural issues and rebuild them into this, which is what the window was right before it's getting its paint and ready to go in. The whole structure is rebuilt, and a lot of these epoxies that we use are more than sufficient and up to the game for repair. A lot of it also requires, one of the advantage of doing this is it supports the local economy, right? You need local craftsmen, you need local craftspeople who can do this work, who can put their hands to it. And it's the hope is that that resurgence in the trades it plays a big part in our business of people wanting to step out from behind the computer and do something tangible with their hands and really get their hands dirty and start working on things and be able to step back and see a difference that they make in their local community. So these kinds of repairs, we have people who come in here, former software folks, former fast food, former UPS drivers, anybody who's done any kind of job, and we can teach them how to do this stuff. It is not terribly complicated. It's just labor intensive, which is probably the biggest hindrance, I think, to this. It's much easier for us to simply say, there's wood rot on my window, I should go buy a new window, when you could honestly, for much less money, hire someone to restore it or restore it yourself, if that's an option. Wrought is probably the number one option thing that we see here. We see this on, there's a screen door, a windowsill. I mean, when you have green, we want green windows, but not this kind of a green window. You know, when there's things growing out of it, you need to do something about it. And a lot of people would look at this and go, clearly too far gone, nothing we can do about it. But we use simple epoxies like these by a company called Abitron. There are several other on the market, Conserve, West system, that are structural epoxies and that we can rebuild whole members of pieces, either very complex profiles or very simple repairs with this. And it's a very simple, like our company uses this mostly because it's fairly foolproof. It's a two-part epoxy, 50% of each, mix them together. Once they're well mixed, then you just press them into place, and the wood filler the wood epoxy in a few hours is hardened. You can sand it, plane it, paint it, do whatever you want to do to it, even stain it. So work very easily. We also have to think about on a prevention side standpoint here. We have a lot of old wood windows, old wood jambs, doors, things like that we're working with. And that old growth wood is particularly rot resistant. But there's also places where, you know, maybe it's on a northern side of the building, it's got a lot of shade, it gets very wet in some climates, and it's just that fungus is going to grow, that rot is going to happen. So we use borate treatments. Boracare is one of them, Timbor is another. And these borate treatments help us with a lot of the wood projects that we work on to just give that extra sense of security for the homeowner, because there's a lot of contractors right now using this product to just treat the entire framing lumber. Once the house is framed and sheathed, they'll just treat it with this, which just goes on very simply with a pump sprayer and it's diluted. And that prevents subterranean termites, Formosan termites, drywood termites. It prevents rot and algae growth. It's a great additive, and it does not cost much once you get to the bare wood. You just need to have a bare wood to apply it to. The next thing that really we get the questions about are obviously, if I've got an old window, it's simply assumed that it can't be efficient. I'll posit that that is absolutely not true. You're going to hear some more from Sam about some of this too on the products that he uses. But I feel like an opportunity to have a more holistic approach. So this is one project we did here that shows a historic steel window from the 1920s. Restored the window. There was obviously a lot of cosmetic issue going on with the window, but we also replaced the glass that was in there with a single pane low E glass. We were able to get a hard coat, place it to the inside, and now you've got this historic profile of the window still there, and you're able to replace all the glazing putty, the paint issues that it was having, and you've got a more energy efficient glass, but not so much that it changed the appearance of the window, right? We're not going with a highly reflective option, although that could if that's what the client wants. On the energy efficiency option, there's also weather stripping. There's just a simple picture from a friend of ours on Instagram, the spring bronze weather stripping. So easy to add items to these windows. Down here in the South, we find, at least in Florida in particular, we find there's not a lot of weather stripping, not a lot of storm windows either, because most of the time, most of the year, the windows were just open because it was so bloody hot down here. But there's a lot of options that I think people are missing, in that there's tints and films you can use, low E glass, shutters, awnings, blinds, shades. There's so many options where you can keep the original window, the original material, like we were talking about for those LEED standards, and you don't have to replace the entire unit. You can simply add on weather stripping like this, get your air infiltration under the code requirements just by adding this simple weather stripping, which is for us $100 to $125 installed on a typical window. You can add the interior and the exterior storm windows, like we were just talking about. Lots of options in there for almost any application. And one of the things I think that most of our clients, both commercial and residential, like the most about the storm windows is that on the interior side, you get a window that doesn't have to go through Historic Preservation Board approval. There's no issue. It's looked at like blinds or shades or something like that. And on the outside, you have the other option of this is going to protect the prime window. It extends the life, shortens and lengthens the maintenance cycle of your main window right there, being able to work through it a little bit longer. And then the maintenance, I find, is one of the issues that I think is also vastly misunderstood on these old windows. This is one of our team out putty glazing some windows on a 19 teens building here in Winter Park, Florida. And everything in a building has a set lifespan, just like the putty on these windows. It's a 20 to 30-year product, but it's a very easy product to replace, very inexpensive product to replace. Knowing the maintenance cycle for your windows is really key. Being able to know that if you have historic windows, not assuming that the problem is that it's an old window and it needs maintenance. I like to say that if it says it's no maintenance, then that means it can't be maintained. So we want to have a window that can be maintained. That way we're not throwing away the fabric of the historic building. Imagine a brick building that every 20, 30 years you had to remove all the bricks, throw them away, and put them all back. That's just not cost effective. That's not a green option. That's not energy effective, because now you're having to pull more resources from the earth. This wood or these steel, these were already resources pulled from the earth. They're here. Let's keep them in good shape by touching up the paint just on an annual basis, touching up the putty, keeping the mechanicals up to date. For on a lot of windows, it's just simply ropes or chains. If they break, replacing them. It's very hard to argue on these historic windows that you can't find rope. Unlike some of the newer windows where you go, this was a proprietary item made by a particular window manufacturer from 2006 to 2013. Can't find it anymore, can't fix it. On these windows, once you go back before, say, World War II, most of the materials in there are always available. There's always going to be paint, putty, rope, the basic elements to these. They're very, very simple, and they can be upgraded very, very simply. So I would encourage people to look at that option when you have historic windows, and know that there is obviously a good opportunity here for saving the historic material, not just for the appearance of it and the historic character of it, but also for the green option, that this is a lot of material that doesn't need to go in the landfill. It can be kept up and it can be maintained. And it really doesn't require a PhD in old windows or building systems to reputty a window or to repaint a window. They just need basic maintenance, basic care, and a little bit of elbow grease from some local craftsmen who can do this kind of work.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was a great presentation. And Catherine Court, thank you. And Brett, thanks for having us here. These are some of my favorite people in the window business. And I'm hoping that right now everybody can see my presentation. All right, so sorry. Anyway, I'm Sam Pardue. I'm the CEO and founder of Indo. We've been in the secondary window business for about 11 years, and I'm going to try and bust some myths about window replacement and secondary windows for you. Before I dive into the rest of the presentation, I just want to show this is what our product looks like. It's actually made out of acrylic, and based on measurements that the homeowner can make themselves, we will make each insert to be the exact shape of the window frame it goes into, but a little bit bigger, so that the way you install our product is by just simply pressing it into the window frame, and it installs without a mounting bracket. And the compression tubing that goes all the way around the edge creates the spring force to hold it in place. It also seals out drafts almost 100%. And this product does a fantastic job of improving comfort, quiet, and energy efficiency once you press it into the inside of the window frame. This is our innovation in the space, and we're excited to share with you kind of some other things about windows. But I think the biggest window myth that's out there is that replacement is the best solution. We saw from Catherine's presentation that secondary glazing can provide tremendous improvements to energy efficiency and also comfort, and it's less expensive. And Scott has shown you that, hey, even if those windows look pretty beat up, they can probably be restored. And I think, the key message here is that 50% of all replacement window sales are to replace replacement windows, right? So once you take out those original windows that may have lasted 100 years or 50 years, you're kind of in this constant replacement cycle as these windows, the replacement windows, typically fail after a certain amount of time. So replacement is kind of a one-way door you go through, and there's no going back. So think twice about it and think about the other options which can provide the same benefits. Indo, as opposed to maybe energy efficiency programs and the labs, really kind of defines the window problems first from the customer's point of view. What do customers experience? They experience discomfort, cold drafts, or heat. They experience noise. Windows is the biggest source of noise penetration in windows. And of course, buildings are huge consumers of energy, so windows are a huge source of energy loss from buildings. In fact, if you look at it, of all the major consumers of energy in the United States, buildings are the biggest consumers of energy. The biggest use of energy inside a building is for heating and cooling. And there, windows are, the primary source, or maybe one of the top 2 or 3 sources of energy loss from the buildings. So it's a hugely important issue, and we have to find all the different ways to deal with it. They are kind of like energy holes in your walls, if you will. 30% of the heat loss in a house happens through windows, and it can be more. And, you have to plug those holes or else you're in a sinking boat. So what can we do? We can do nothing. That's ineffective and expensive over time. You're paying this constant fee in your higher utility bills, and also the discomfort or maybe noise penetration. Replacement is effective but expensive, and as I mentioned, it kind of gets you on the hamster wheel of always having to replace your windows. Adding secondary glazing is, I think, super effective and affordable. And there is the secondary window circle. So Catherine talked about this a little bit, but what are secondary windows? What is secondary glazing? So some of them go on the outside like traditional storm windows. Others go on the inside like window inserts. But the key is they leave the existing windows in place. You're not modifying those existing windows. You're just kind of providing a second layer of protection. And I think Catherine talked about a lot of that stuff, so I'll just go over it. But the point of these interior storm windows is to make interior spaces more comfortable and quiet, to improve the energy efficiency. In our experience at Endo, the vast number of our customers are purchasing due to comfort and quiet. They love the energy efficiency, the fact that they're going to reduce their energy bills, but that's not necessarily the prime driver of a decision to address their window problems. So all of you out there who are architects or other people who are interfacing with clients or customers of some sort, I think it's really a great idea to start with what is the customer's point of view on this issue? How do they define the issues and the problems that they're experiencing? And I think that's true for commercial buildings as well. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So, but if you do an exterior storm window, they're called storm windows because they protect your primary glazing from weather. They do have energy efficiency benefits as well. But I think overall that secondary glazing is a really great option for replacing the windows because of the cost, because you can preserve the original windows and all of their aesthetic beauty, and you can actually improve and repair them, as Scott has just shown. There's challenges, as I mentioned, with the quality of replacement windows, and secondary glazing can do a better job of blocking noise than replacement windows. So it's such a big issue that the United States Department of Energy conducted a survey of all like 400 energy efficiency technologies, and they ranked secondary windows number 3 out of 400 in their carbon reduction potential. So if you think of everything out there that we can do to reduce carbon footprint, secondary windows are number 3 in the potential to cost effectively reduce energy use. So that I think is just a very interesting point to consider. We've done some pilots that with endo inserts that show a 20% reduction in heating and cooling bills. This is really comparable to a very good replacement window. And one of those studies was done by Pacific Northwest National Lab. And that one showed right around 20% reduction in energy consumption for heating and cooling. And that's what we have found. So it's great that DOE is recognizing the potential now as well. So why maybe don't you know about this already, right? What are the barriers to entry that have prevented secondary glazing from becoming a really popular thing? I think, well, one, as Catherine mentioned, there's a lot of kind of legacy thinking about what storm windows are. And, they got a bad reputation, I think, because of people having to climb up ladders and install and uninstall and things like that. But fundamentally, we think the biggest barrier to entry is awareness. So thank you for being here to hear us out today. Sometimes compatibility is an issue. Our inserts go on the inside of a window. Sometimes there's blinds in the way or kind of that may need to be relocated to be face mounted. So that is something that can sometimes happen as you've got aesthetic window treatments that are already in place. In the commercial space, and Endo does a lot of residential work, but we do a lot of very large commercial projects as well. One of the biggest barriers in the commercial space, interestingly enough, is a rule of thumb, which says that energy efficiency improvements in commercial buildings require a 5 to 7 year payback, which is it creates this giant barrier to people, to companies and organizations buying products that would give them something like a 7 to 10% return on investment. In other words, a 10 to 15 year payback period. Somehow that's not acceptable. And I don't know why in today's stock market situation and the way bonds are working, like why we can't get commercial building owners to take a longer view of energy efficiency. But if we could affect that one variable, it'd be huge. And finally, there's the replacement window industry, which is constantly pouring out a lot of dubious claims about performance, et cetera. So the myth creation industry is actively at work. So those are really, I think, what's kept secondary glazing from taking off faster. But luckily, I think in a lot of ways, Endo's paving the way. We do a lot more marketing than a lot of the other companies that Catherine mentioned. And if you actually look at all their websites, we're really the only one that has independent reviews where customers are super happy with the products, right? So I think, aesthetics and other things are really important to penetrating and getting this market to really take off. So it's a huge issue. Mentioned this before, but there's actually 40% of all residential homes, 50% of small commercial spaces, 35% of commercial spaces housing overnight guests still have single pane windows, right? And that's just a giant energy problem for the United States. We can build LEED Platinum from here to the end of time with new construction, but if we don't go back and address these windows, we have a problem. And I think every energy efficiency expert in the world knows that replacing windows to save energy is not cost effective. It really is not ever going to pay off in terms of the positive SIRs that we were talking about for secondary glazing. So secondary glazing is the way to go for this giant window problem. I think with our value, you have single panes at R1, standard panes are typically R2.0. With storm windows, they vary. Low E does boost performance and can be quite applicable, but look for those at least have the 90% of the double pane window in terms of improving the radiant air barrier. The other thing that can be improved is the air sealing, right? So this is actually a huge benefit. Not only, the energy efficiency models will predict amount of energy savings based on, okay, this is how much air flows through, but it also has a huge impact on occupant comfort. So with window inserts, we actually lead the industry with reducing air infiltration. There was a question in Q&A about air quality, and I think the latest thinking is in many communities, especially LMI communities, you have a lot of air pollution. You have people who suffer from asthma and things like that. So pollen is coming in and air pollution is coming in through the windows. The best solution is to do what they do in the net zero homes, which is really control your airflow and have air infiltration on the inside of the unit while you're reducing the amount of random air that comes into the structure. So the air kind of testing that's done involving blower door tests, typically Endo inserts are doing really well on that. But I think a lot of secondary glazing will really improve your air infiltration, your uncontrolled air infiltration. So another big variable is human comfort, and this is what the computer models cannot predict, right? So the computer models are going to look at the radiant energy loss, they're going to look at the airflow coming through, but they can't predict how humans touch the thermostat. And one thing that really drives that is radiant air temperature. So you can be right next to a surface that is very cold, and even though the air temperature between you and that surface is 70 degrees, that cold surface is going to suck the heat right out of your body and make you feel cold. So exterior storm windows must be leaky. They're made of glass, and the interior glass can still be quite cold. So they're not between you and that cold glass surface, whereas interior inserts create a nice warm surface between you and that cold surface, and they dramatically increase radiant room temperature and provide a great sense of comfort, which is especially magnified when you eliminate the cold drafts. So that really impacts the energy savings that you get. Another huge benefit is noise reduction. This is kind of hard to read, but single pane windows are here, double pane windows are here. You get a nice improvement with double pane windows. But if you put an acoustic grade endo insert over a single pane window, you're going to get about a 70% reduction in noise, whereas a double pane window is going to reduce it by about 25%. So we can get you up there very close to kind of 10-inch masonry walls with our products put over, say, a double pane window. So we actually sell a lot of our product for window soundproofing, and in the commercial space, quieter spaces make higher rents or better occupancy of your hotel rooms. We have a new product called Endo Kit, which is blazing the trail on cost effectiveness. It's available right now as a beta testing at a 50% lower cost than our current entry-level products. It presses into place just like our existing products, creates the same air seal, has the same clarity, and provides similar thermal insulation. It's also upgradable, so it starts out, the entry-level price has a film in there, but you can also put acrylic in it. And we're super excited about it. We're piloting it with weatherization assistance programs around the United States and providing comfort and energy efficiency to people who have not been able to access it earlier. So that's where we're really targeting Endo Kit. So very excited about the progress we're making there. And also, we just wanted to touch on the Inflation Reduction Act really quickly. There's a couple programs we believe are going to, that interior storm windows or secondary glazing will qualify for. There's a homes rebate, modeled versus measured, and then there's a high efficiency electric home rebate, air sealing measure that can provide up to $1,600 in tax credits for air sealing. Programs are not finalized. The rulemaking, I think, won't be finalized for a while, maybe later this year, but we're waiting to see what happens. When it comes to the homes rebate, there's kind of this graphic, but with the bottom line is endo inserts save about 20% on energy bills. And if you combine it with other energy efficiency upgrades, you can easily achieve the 35%, which allows the largest amount of rebates. So, I think, so anyway, we're waiting to see but it looks very promising that there's going to be a lift to the industry from the IRA, and that could be just the ticket for us. Anyway, that's the end of my presentation. I think we want to leave the last minutes for questions here. Really appreciate everyone's time, and for my panelists, my fellow panelists, for joining us today. So I think that is it. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, let's get into some of those questions. But before we do, just real quick, as a reminder here, yes, this session here is one, if you missed some of it or want to rewatch it or share it, will be available on our YouTube channel. So you can go there and subscribe now and get an update when the session is available and ready for you all to check out. For those of you looking for your CEUs who are watching this in the future on demand, not right now, go ahead and head over to our Thinkific channel or the USGBC channel and take your quiz with a 10% or an 80% passing rate rather, and you'll receive your certificate. And then for those of you watching here live today, if you've been here for the entire time, you are now approved for your continuing ed. And so you'll find that in your inbox here in a couple of days from certs at gutenbergcerts.com. Check your spam if you don't see it, and you'll get it there. And before we get to some of those questions that are pouring in, again, we have to say a huge thanks to all of our volunteers, our nearly 250 members, our board of directors, our executive director, Jose Reyna, and all of our top tier sponsors, Mitsubishi Electric, Rheem, and April Air, all of our sponsors really who allow us to do the work that we do and put these sessions on. So, I saw a question come in, just taking a step back here, and it really has to do with ventilation and air quality. The idea of sealing up our windows even more and potentially creating an air quality issue. Does somebody want to speak to that briefly, and what the trade-offs there are?
I can start out. I mentioned this in my presentation. I think it's all about controlled airflow. You see this in passive homes. I'm sorry, I said net zero homes, but kind of the same. Passive house architecture is all about, basically eliminating the uncontrolled airflow through your windows and then having controlled airflow so that you can filter the air that's coming in. The best way to do that is with an HRV or an ERV, so you can recover the energy as you do that air infiltration. Or sorry, to bring air in. A lot of these secondary glazing systems are operable, and with Endo, they just allow different type of operability of your windows. You can easily, our product is super easy to install. It's also super easy to remove. You can open your windows and kind of use the product in a cycle that way. So, I think air infiltration is something when you get your home, but, I think the other point is that even if you seal up your windows 100% in your typical structure, you're still getting tons of airflow and air cycles through all the other cracks in the structure. So no one's going to hermetically seal up their structure by putting inserts or something like that, or secondary glazing into their windows. You noticed we typically, in the studies that have been done, I think Catherine showed this as well, when you put in secondary glazing, you might reduce the air infiltration in the home by about 10%. So it's significant. And it also dramatically impacts occupant comfort, but it's not complete, right? You still have lots of uncontrolled airflow through the structure.
And I would add that looking at the baseline is an important aspect to it, to go, if you do a blower door test beforehand, finding out where you are and then sealing up windows, the chances of you falling below that threshold, which I forget what it is at the moment, where you're going to need mechanical ventilation, are fairly slim on an existing building that's 20, 30, 40 years old. You're probably going to be better off sealing the windows as best as you can. And then you're still going to be in a mechanical or a place where the ventilation, the airflow in and out of the house, the infiltration is still something that you could continue to lower. And if you've gotten to a point where you've made the building so tight that you need mechanical ventilation, then I think that's just a benefit to go, okay, now I'm going to have to add that aspect there. But rarely have I seen that happen in any of the projects we've worked on.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think, the last point I'd like to make here is, as you reduce air infiltration, different type, you can caulk, when you see an energy efficiency crew go into a building, they're sealing up all kinds of cracks all around the building. But the air infiltration that has the biggest impact on the occupant comfort, and therefore the biggest impact on energy efficiency, is the air infiltration that people feel coming through their windows, right? And so if you can address that, you're having the biggest impact on comfort, and that's kind of the biggest impact on thermostat set points.
Great, thanks.
I was just going to say that I agree with everything that was just said. And I included a kind of a written response to that question as well. So.
Right, yeah, people can check that out in the tab. So, thinking about some of these products, and especially, or these strategies, these secondary window strategies, some of these are kind of do-it-yourself friendly, or they're pitched that way. But, the question that kind of came in, does installation expertise matter to really hit these energy efficiency targets, to really hit these air leakage targets, and quite frankly, for aesthetics? I mean, are you going to get poor aesthetics when you get people who don't know what they're doing? So are there trainings available? What can you do to speak to expertise of installation?
Catherine, maybe you can provide a broader view of the industry than I would. I can speak for Endo, and 95% of all the installations and measurements are done by homeowners for our product. I mean, Scott will provide this service to his customers as well, but we've taken some care. First of all, our product is very easy to install. I mean, you just press it into the inside of the window frame and the tubing compresses, and that's what holds it in. So it's very, very homeowner accessible. And our measuring process, which is another really critical part of ensuring success, we've put a lot of thought and care into that. So when a homeowner measures their windows, typically we mail them a laser measuring kit to get really good dimensions in. And our measurement software includes automatic error detection. When people make measurement mistakes, we catch it almost every time. And it's kind of a combination of statistical methods, as well as some Pythagorean theorem and fuzzy logic. So we deliver very large trapezoids across the country that fit into their window frames 99.8% of the time. And we have a snug fit guarantee for in case you do make a mistake, if you follow our process. So, there's a range of installation requirements and expertise needed, but I think the range at least starts out with, homeowner DIY friendly.
And I'll just add that, as Sam mentioned, yes, across the board, over 85% of storm window panels are now installed as do-it-yourself measures, which implies a simplicity to that install. I think the most critical thing, though, for anybody that's using contractors is that you do not have to be a professional glazer to be dealing with that. And I think that is something that we have encountered out in the field, especially working with sort of weatherization contractors and some folks where this might be a little bit of a new measure for them, is that there's this fear about dealing with windows by contractors. And these are easy to install very easily. Anybody contractor that's proficient with tape measure and some caulk and screwdriver can install about any version of these panels. And but kind of appreciating that concern, we are, as part of the SWIP campaign, trying to make more materials available to kind of bridge that gap and bring a little bit more awareness to this kind of ease of installation. But the short answer is you can't, if you have some of those basic skills, it's kind of hard to screw up. And all the manufacturers we work with have very clear instructions and ways to leave you with an aesthetically pleasing installation.
So, thinking about historic, obviously, especially the interior windows approach, seemed like a really good way. And I think you mentioned it, Scott, to deal with some of the headaches. I know their heart's in the right place. The Historic Commission's calls our projects. I've heard a lot, but what are some of the most common issues? And this was specific to you at first, Scott, that you encounter. And what are some of the things for folks to look out for when refurbishing old windows?
Yeah, as someone who sits on a hysteric preservation board, as I often hear them called, there's just like a lot of things, there's a lot of myths out there about what's going to happen. They won't let me do anything to my house. Usually there is very little concern for the main concern that they have is maintaining the historic fabric. So if there is an original window, then the historic district is usually going to say, well, you need to keep that historic window. They're not going to require that you upgrade it through energy efficiency. They're not going to require that you restore it. They just require that you keep it. Now, we've agreed that, Sam said in his presentation, it's like you could do nothing, which is not a good option long term. But so a lot of people work through that slowly but surely. So it's usually about keeping the historic fabric. If the historic fabric is missing, and you need to get a replacement window of some sort, then you'll usually be okay if that window or door or whatever you're trying to replace that was missing looks the same character as what you have. So putting in a modern, just like a fixed plate glass window on what would have probably been a 6/6 window on a colonial, that's not going to usually fly for most historic districts. But they understand that if you have a window that was put in the 70s on this 1700s house, and you want to replace that, weird design aluminum window that's failing, they're usually amenable to it as long as you can give them here's a design that fits and looks like what we have. So that includes like dimensional muntins, same kind of design, same kind of proportions. A lot of vinyl windows have trouble with that because the frames have to get so much larger to give the strength that they need to, especially for larger openings, than the wood or steel windows in particular didn't. Most districts don't usually care about paint colors or honestly glass. We've dealt with that on a lot of commercial and residential projects. As long as you're keeping the existing wood frame and sash or the steel frame and sash, swapping out the glass to a new energy efficient glass option, totally fine, as long as you're not changing the appearance of it generally to go to like a mirror finish, whether it's a tint or a very, a very greenish looking low E, and you're only doing it on some of that building. It really changes the historic character of the building. So that's where they tend to focus on, is keeping the fabric if it's already there and doing pieces that fit with the existing pattern of development.
Any other thoughts to add on historic or?
Well, I think that is one of the benefits. I mean, especially with Indo, is that because we're not modifying the structure at all, there's no permitting required, there's no historic preservation, certifications required, and there's not even any condo association, approvals that are required. We can go in very cleanly from kind of that point of view.
Great. So, we talk obviously, with windows, aesthetics, that's going to be a huge reason that people do anything with windows, despite us wanting to believe it's, energy related. But so given that, what kind of paint options, color options exist for these secondary windows, or limitations? Or can they be painted if people don't get the color that they want, and would that still work?
So I'll just speak about Indo. I think there's a huge variety of color options available. Some products can easily be painted. Silicone, in our case, we use silicone as the compression system, and that cannot be painted. It won't take any color at all. We can do custom colors for larger commercial jobs, but in the residential space, we have several different colors that tend to work really well for the vast majority of people, a soft white, a brown, and a dark charcoal color. And I will add, in terms of the aesthetics, I mean, we did our mission is to sell to people from all walks of life, but we've noticed that we've sold into probably 1,000 homes worth more than $1 million in the United States. I mean, we go into exceptional homes where you have exceptional windows and you want to preserve those aesthetics. And I would say, in the secondary glazing space, Indo has the lowest profile and blends in with the architecture so well. Most people don't even see the product from the outside or even the inside, and they're kind of sometimes surprised that it's there. So our mission is to allow the original, the beauty of the original windows to shine through. Scott can probably back me up on that. He's probably put some inserts into some beautiful homes.
We have, and it's really kind of fun when we've posted a few before and after pictures, particularly of Indo, where people go, "I don't understand what you're showing," and I was like, "You have to look really closely to notice that there's a storm window on that window." So there's a lot to be said for the low profileness of those inserts. And then even back to the exterior side, there are options on historic buildings that are site-built local options. There are one of the boards that I'm on is the Window Preservation Alliance. On their website, it's windowpreservationalliance.com/directory. There's a list of window restorers nationwide that do this type of work, restoration, but also that will build historic wood storm windows that aren't, off-the-shelf products, but you can have custom built to fit your window. And the paint colors are honestly whatever you want them to be. So those are an option. And a lot of them will build with low E glass or different options within their laminated glass, even to help with noise or energy efficiency. And that is a historic option that is also an option for some people, depending on their building, if you don't have an issue with having to get up on a ladder to change them out all the time.
And I'll just add that for the energy rated products, which is sort of what we're advocating from the DOE side, yes, there are multiple colors that are available. And there are wood and aluminum painted products as well. So there's Chosen Wood panel has some wood products that could be painted to anything. And then probably the one that's done a lot with historic is the Quanta panel, which if you go to their site, you look at the color palette availability, and it's pretty much every possible color that you could, possibly want. So yes, those are available as energy rated products as well.
Let's talk briefly about some different unique scenarios that might occur. In one case, we've got a question here about patio doors. Can those be blocked? Are there solutions? And we always welcome our commercial folks who show up from time to time. So we've got a question here about just, I think, large institutional windows that just get really big, and what kind of options exist out there for these types of situations.
Well,
or have they all come to the wrong place? And
sliding glass doors we don't do.
Yeah,
we've thought about it, but we kind of, our product is not a door, and I think egress is really important in those situations, and we've just never kind of applied our technology to those applications.
We did
on top of go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we did test a sliding panel. I mean, there's certain doors, I don't know, but we did in our lab home study test an exterior attachment to a sliding glass door, and similar savings. So that product is available. That was through Larson Manufacturing. At the time, there were no interior inserts, and probably still not for that patio door application.
Another question here, and Sam, I know you need to check out, so stay with us as long as you need, but we're going to keep answering a couple more questions, and then if you have to get going, thanks for your time, and we'll be sending over any further questions that got missed over to you.
I do have my weekly staff meeting coming up here in a minute, but if there's maybe one last question that is applicable to us, I could be happy to answer that.
There was, and it was about the weight of typical residential sized interior storm windows, and then to add to it, if you can get to it, is can they be hinged to aid with emergency egress?
Right. So we do not hinge our product currently. The weight is actually pretty lightweight. We use acrylic instead of glass, even though it's more expensive than glass, because in our application, it's really easy for people to handle. It's lightweight. So it's about 3/4 of a pound per square foot for that product, for our standard grade product. Our acoustic grade product is a bit heavier. So our product does satisfy egress requirements because there's no special tool required to remove it. Just there's a D-ring, you pop it out, and it comes right out. Also, if someone's coming in from the outside, like a firefighter, that it'll just, they'll be able to knock it right into the room without a problem. So we've been put into plenty of windows that have egress requirements.
Great. And then there was, is there a rule of thumb for a cost ratio? And I know that's difficult to figure out these days, but for a cost ratio of when you might be upgrading new windows to new windows versus, and probably in this case, I think they're talking about the cheapest windows you can find versus, using a secondary window.
I would not recommend putting the cheapest secondary glazing in because of that replacement cycle that you're going to be facing. Sure, it's 15 years in the future, but yeah, I think about 50% of the least expensive windows. But again, it depends on, do you have lead paint you need to control and things like that? There's, what are the walls like? And, every time you open up those surfaces, you can create, unexpected problems. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variability in the installation cost, while you can certainly find, very cheap replacement windows in, a building center or something like that. I do have to drop off now. Brett, if there's other questions in Q&A, can you capture those or send them my way? I'd be happy to follow up with people directly afterwards. My email is just sam at indowindows.com and that's INDOWWINDOWS.com. Really appreciate everyone's participation here today, including my fellow panelists and you, Brett. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Sam. Good to see you.
I would say on the replacement window question that you were asking about, I've likened it very much to, replacing the tires on your vehicle. The more you spend on that, you get what you pay for in a lot of cases. And yes, I can get the cheapest tires possible, but those will also last the shortest time and give me the lowest performance. So the question is then, when you look at the large payback, which usually on a homeowner front, they're not typically looking there. They're going, well, my energy bill went down by, $10, $20, $30 a month. Great, I saved the money, but will that last? Will that savings be there in 5 years or 10 years? It's doubtful that same energy performance on year 1 will continue versus year 10. So if you want something that's going to last a significant length of time, you need to do some of those longer term calculations on it, because it's not while you may only be in the house for 7 to 10 years, that window is going to be in the house for a much longer period of time, or that house is going to be there for a much longer period of time, 100 years potentially. And we need to not just think about our own economies, but the economy of our country and our built environment going forward. So that's one of the things that has led me more onto the restoration side of things, is not getting down going through that one-way door that Sam talked about, unless you have a condition where you're like, the window really is missing and there's nothing, where this window has completely fallen apart. You need a solution in those cases.
And I guess I would just add that sort of in the rule of thumb category, we have across a range of different studies, we've kind of come up with the adding the secondary panel is, you can do that for about a third or less of the cost of full replacement. And that's a full replacement of a pretty economical full replacement. As we know, anybody that's been dealing with windows, you can spend as much as you want. So that's kind of our rule of thumb.
Great. And I don't know if either of you, have any thoughts on this question, but obviously with the massive material shortage we're facing all across the trades industry, are some of these secondary windows facing these problems? Is this another benefit to go secondary windows? Are they typically ahead of traditional windows, or what are you hearing out there?
Well, I have been dealing with this, so I can speak to it a bit, is that they're facing similar sorts of things, especially with aluminum extrusion, if there's any that are dealing with that. So they have their lead time issues as well, but comparatively, the full replacement is even, it's multiplied such that the lead time is even worse. And so relatively, you still have an advantage. And in good times, it'd be just a few weeks, even for these custom products, just lead time. But now we're looking at 6 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And some of the suppliers I've worked with on that side. The good news for us on a restoration side is we're not very beholden to supplies. Most of our work is 92% of our cost is labor. And so it's just a matter of our crews being able to get out there and do the work, hire and train, and we're able to keep up with that. And we're not often held back by things. Glass has not been affected as much, it seems like, at least in our experience, in terms of the supply chain. And everything, lumber, we can still find the lumber. The prices did come down considerably, but we're not usually rebuilding whole units. We're just restoring what's there. So a lot of our work creates very little waste and consumes very little product. So we're able to keep up with things and not have those same kind of lag times, other than when we have hiring issues and training, trying to get enough people on board.
Got it. Well, we are at the end of the questions, the end of our time here for discussions today. Just briefly, where can people go to learn more or contact you if you'd like? And I'll start with you, Scott.
You can probably two good places to go visit are thecraftsmanblog.com. That is where I am writing every week. You can go there and that'll lead you to links to our store, some of our courses. We have a course on window restoration, and also all our social media. I'm on Instagram all the time at the Craftsman blog. And then to check out my company here in Orlando, that would be austinhistorical.com.
Great. And you, Catherine?
Yeah, I did include will folks be getting, should we put together a PDF of our presentation that
Oh,
we
that's
could
already
send
been
out to
sent
folks?
out. So, yep, we're good. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the two sites that I mentioned, the SWIP site is a little bit long, but if you actually Google SWIP or secondary or storm window insulating panel campaign, it'll get you to an EERE energy.gov site that can get you there. And the short one is the PAWS site as well. That's pause.energy. PAWS.energy will bring you to the PAWS site, which also has some window and secondary glazing initiatives taking place.
Great. Well, Scott, Catherine, and then to Sam, thank you all so much for your time and being with us here today. Thank you all for joining us. We'll catch you all next week. Take care and have a good rest of your week. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.